Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Isabel, for the introduction. Yes, as Isabel mentioned, I'm going to briefly introduce some of the key results of our policy brief about enhancing electoral participation of mobile voters in the upcoming European Parliament elections. This policy brief is a product of an extensive academic and policy literature. And the main aim of the policy brief is, first of all, to understand, to highlight the underrepresentation of mobile voters and identify key barriers in electoral participation, and also talk about what works and offer models and recommendations for 2024 European Parliament elections. We already mentioned what we mean with new Europeans, but here we specifically focus on mobile voters since European Parliament elections is only targeting EU citizens. We also target here naturalized migrants, naturalized citizens. They can be EU and other citizens of another EU country, or from a third country as well, or second generation EU citizens, or mobile EU citizens. So these will be mainly our target groups when we talk about mobile voters. It's easy to call them under one umbrella term. So before going into details, although Isabel already mentioned, I just want to show you the figures because it's usually better to see with the figures and the graph. So the voter turnout in the European Parliament elections from 1979 to 2019. So as you can see, there is a declining trend since the beginning, since 1979, but there is a hopeful increase in the last elections, which makes us hopeful to really focus on the next elections, especially the higher voter turnout among young and first-time voters is also important to mention. So when we look at the literature, we see that this voter turnout declining trend is explained with second order elections nature of the European Parliament. Of course, there are so many other reasons maybe, but one of them is being the second order elections, which means that people conceive European Parliament elections as less important compared to national elections and also national politics. So this group, mobile voters, is a really crucial and growing EU demographic. I will briefly just show you the figures and then go to other parts since Isabel already mentioned. So as you can see, 5 million immigrants, naturalized migrants in the last 10 years. And also over 11 million EU mobile citizens. As you can see, in some countries, the rate is enormous. Like in Luxembourg, for example, the percentage of mobile EU citizens is a lot, and also in some other countries, Austria, Belgium, and Ireland. So we have a really high population of EU mobile citizens in these countries. So despite these significant numbers, we have low electoral participation. And we checked studies and post-election surveys to see what is happening, and they show that eligible mobile voters vote considerably less often than other citizens. And when we check the data especially for mobile EU citizens, because at least it's easy to get this data from Commission, it shows that only some 10% of mobile EU citizens registered to vote in the last European Parliament elections in their host member state. And some others registered to vote in their home country, but there is a huge gap in between this, and so many people did not register to vote at all. So, and it is difficult to find the figure for naturalized migrants because of the lack of data, first of all, and also different data collection methods of member states. So it's difficult to give this comparative data as we can give it for EU mobile citizens, but we know it from national surveys and also like local regional election results as well. Mobile voters, naturalized migrants, and also third country nationals who can vote in local elections vote less often. So it also gives us some insights about their participation in European Parliament elections. So we want to understand the main reasons behind their voting behavior, and we looked what drives the vote. First of all, individual determinants. So these general voting determinants are valid for mobile voters as well, but it is usually in the political participation, electoral participation literature, the first thing that you will see is the individual determinants, like voting likelihood increases with age, income, and education. This is also valid for mobile voters, and their employment status and interest in politics are also very effective. But there are also some unique challenges for mobile voters. First of all, their migration experience really adds complexity to decision making when it comes to voting, and also language barriers, difficulty in accessing election information. And if you're a first-time voter in another country, this first-time voter registration process is also very challenging for mobile voters. And there are also some sociological factors. These factors may be like we cannot really do immediate, like we cannot take immediate actions, but this is also important to understand the voting behavior and long-term policy changes as well. So the first thing is the role of socialization. Voting behavior is shaped by early and current social environments. We looked at the differences between second generation and first generation. And studies show that second generation migrants influence more by destination countries' environment, but still there are some persisting patterns in the second generation as well when it comes to voting. So when people are exposed to the political system of a country, it boosts their political engagement. And the longer they reside in a country, of course, the higher the electoral participation. And also integration strategies are also very effective for both first generation and also subsequent generations. Another interesting finding is the country's voting culture, because migrants adapt to local voting norms. So, for example, in Nordic countries, there is a higher turnout in general in elections. And of course, it influences foreign-born voters' participation as well. So they also vote more often. And when we look at the lower turnout in Eastern European countries, we also see that there is less engagement in the foreign-born voters as well. And the most important thing here is the institutional factors, like the challenges related to administrative procedures, voting procedures as well. So the first thing is about registration procedure. We also saw it in the list of barriers in the Mentimeter poll a few minutes ago. So for example, there are different disparities across member states when it comes to registration procedures. In some countries, you can automatically register. In some others, you need to do manual registration. In some countries, you have like the voting is compulsory. In other countries, it's voluntary. So you really need to know what is happening in each country. And also policies like automatic registration also have been linked to higher turnout rates, and which is, I think, easy to understand. People do not really need to make an effort to register. They are automatically registered. And electoral procedure variations are also very important, because there are differences in electoral system, registration procedures, eligibility criteria, and voting methods across member states. For example, in one country, you can vote at the age of 16, although it's not very common in some countries you can vote, so they lowered the voting age. In others, it's 18. So if you're an EU mobile citizen in a country where you can vote at 16, so you might be confused and you maybe do not even realize that you can vote in this country. So these are very like disparities across member states. And also innovative methods like electronic voting are still lacking in many states, and which also makes it very difficult for mobile voters. Although like the other list is also more or less about challenges, there are also some extra challenges for mobile voters when it comes to these institutional and administrative barriers. First of all, lack of understanding of the host country's political system. So which was also like in the rankings, I think it was ranked a lot. So yeah, it is difficult to vote if you don't know the system. And if you don't know the language, you cannot understand the system. So it's insufficient information about voting rules as well. And also administrative complications in the registration and voting process, and also lack of remote voting options and clear information on official government websites. So the only thing sometimes you need is to see like on a screen what, when, and how. So like it should be that easy, but sometimes I checked it myself to see how it works in Belgium, for example, recently, and I really could not find all the relevant information for myself like in a clear way. So I can understand how difficult it could be for so many people like me. So we have a list of recommendations in the policy brief, but here we just grouped a couple of them to really kickstart the discussion in the panel as well. So we try to focus on only some aspects. So for more details, you will see them in the policy brief and it's published. So the first recommendation could be raising awareness and boosting civic engagement, especially emphasizing the value of voting, especially when it comes to European Parliament elections. As I said before, it is considered less important and less effective than national elections. So people should really understand the value of their vote in the EP elections so that they are motivated to take this effort to register, to vote, and take all these administrative hurdles into consideration. So, and civic education programs tailored for migrants and mobile voters in general, and facilitating platforms for migrants to discuss politics and voting, and also nurturing a strong voting culture in historically low turnout countries, as I mentioned, Eastern European countries, for example. So people there do not vote themselves. That's why, I mean, it's normal for mobile voters not to vote. So we should, first of all, really find ways to nurture a strong voting culture in these countries. And also partnering with civil and migrant-led organizations for better election outreach, engaging migrant leaders as connectors for enhanced political participation, and supporting these organizations to advocate and communicate electoral concerns as well. So this part of recommendations will be mostly targeted to policymakers and authorities working on elections, responsible for elections. So first of all, of course, simple voter registration and procedures, because this is one of the biggest challenges when it comes to voting, especially European Parliament elections. So simplified registration for EU mobile citizens and naturalized migrants, mobile voters in general, and harmonized voting procedures across the EU, especially for mobile EU citizens to understand the system. It should not really change completely from one country to another, and then also encouraging online and automatic registration for European elections. Also, I think it's important for people to see some role models, some representation in the political parties as well. It's not only about voting, it's also about being represented in these political parties as well. That's why it's important to really guarantee this representation, reflecting population diversity, especially migrants in the political entities, and also employing multilingual outreach for election communications, informing mobile EU citizens about voting rights in their languages. So there are some efforts from the part of EU as well to do this. So you will find the details in the policy brief, and also we will discuss it later as well. We have also a representative from the European Parliament, so probably he will give you more details about their initiatives. So, but still, I think this is an important issue to consider for upcoming elections. And also using technology to for get out to vote campaigns in general for voting and registration, especially for young and first-time voters, especially for young voters, since they are really involved in using technology in their daily lives. I think it's always easy for them to see these things online, and I think they will be more attracted to participate in elections as well. And this last part of recommendations is mostly for long-term thinking and long-term integration and political engagement. So one of them is, of course, highlighting the role of education here. We discussed the civic education programs and the other education activities, but in general, when education level increases, the likelihood to vote also increases. So it's really important to highlight education. And also supporting research, because when we were doing this research, we just realized that there's lots of issues about lack of data, and also differences in data collection, even in Eurostat, you can see that, I mean, like there are, like for some countries, you don't have data. So it's really important to have this data, collect this data and share this data so that researchers can do something out of it. And first of all, to understand the voting behavior, we should see some research, and also based on this research, policies as well. So it's really important to collect data on mobile use, citizens turnout for effective policies, and also including people with migration backgrounds, like naturalized migrants, and also second generation EU citizens. It's important to see this disaggregated data to create tailored policies and also measures when it comes to voting. So I'm going to stop here. If you have questions, we can discuss it later on as well. And if you would like to ask more detailed questions, here is my email address as well. So thank you so much.